I had played a villain long, long ago, and the idea of playing this particular character seemed like a lot of fun. And of course, Mel Gibson, one of the most talented filmmakers out there. As a filmmaker, I was always a huge, huge fan of Braveheart, Apocalypto, Hacksaw, Passion of the Christ. I mean, he's one of the most talented filmmakers out there. So. Well, I always want to say that Daryl Booth, I mean, you try to say that you found some sort of way to like this character when inhabiting him, but I just loved that he was this kind of this unapologetic, diabolical guy who, it didn't take long, it doesn't take long to get into, the real guy. I mean, within 15 minutes of the movie, he's like, you know what? Screw this. This is what's happening, like it or not. And, I love that about the movie. I just, love the idea of doing something contained and doing something with a twist. And all of my crazy ideas, whether it was starting off with a Southern accent and then turning into this mafia hitman and then the big reveal up top, Mel was into all of it. I mean, I'm a big fan of movies that have villains that really kind of drive the movie. If you think about The Line of Fire with John Malkovich, you think about, there's many others, Robert De Niro and Cape Fear. I mean, the list goes on for great villains that could really drive a movie. Those are movies that always stood out for me. And I don't know, I always had a tendency to root for those guys, even though I knew that, I knew what the ending would be like for them. We had to create all of the effects outside, but you're in the plane, there's lots of movement. We didn't really know when the movement was going to come. The turbulence is shaking, the pitching up, pitching left, pitching down, pitching right. So, you were kind of getting flung around all the time. You had cameras that were in there with us and, guys that were attached to bungee cords and stuff like that. And somebody was off in a corner somewhere with the remote controls having at it. I mean, well, it was right there on the page, but I think Mel's directing, the editing, obviously the intensity that they created in that environment. And those guys, both Michelle and Topher did a great job as actors selling the fear, and I got to have, I had the kind of easier role where I got to kind of play crazy and hopefully continue to keep them on the edge of their seat, on the edge of their seats, but also on their toes. The only way to see this movie is on the big screen next to other people. I mean, there are so many movie moments where you're going to grab the person next to you, even though it's a stranger. And these are the kind of movies that I love seeing in a theater because it's so interactive with the audience. Think about seeing, one of these movies like in Times Square, the Man's Chinese Theater. I mean, it's just, people yelling at the screen and very interactive.
I thought it was a really propulsive, exciting script, and I loved the character. I loved the journey that she goes on, and the past that she has that kind of informs this job that she's about to do. And it just really interested me playing a character that was very different from anything that I'd played before, and the team that were putting it together. It was it read on the page like the movie does as you see it. It's like a 90-minute intense action film. And I hadn't read anything like that before. It was so great. Yeah, I actually had a marshal who was sort of on standby and there for me to ask questions, and I did a little bit of training with him. And I did some combat training for the fight scenes, which was, a great experience. And Mark has a regular, stunt team that he works with. So there was about a week of just kind of the build up before we started shooting. But this was a very short shoot. It was like 3 to 4 weeks. So we had quite, very little time for preparation, but there was great resources around me before doing it. Well, it was quite an unusual job to do because it was only 3 actors on set at one time. So and filming in this really confined plane was quite a challenge, and very funny at times because we could never kind of stand upright. And so the plane was completely intact, so they never kind of took out any walls or any of the roof. So the camera team really were in there with us the whole time. So it's a very intimate setting, you know, for you to all kind of be in this tight space together. And though it was a very intense subject and intense kind of moments that you see in the film, there was some great levity in between. Topher he's such a funny good guy, and we ended up sort of having a real laugh in between. And I think it shows actually in the film. It kind of comes across that we sort of have this sort of almost like a sibling sort of closeness towards the end of the film. Mark is such a pro, and it was a real pleasure to work with him. You know, I've been an admirer of his work for such a long time, and actually to see him in person do such a different role from, you know, stuff that he's done in recent years was a real joy to see him bringing that character to life, and quite terrifying, as you can see. Yeah, I think you have to see this on a big screen, you know, for all of the visual effects and, you know, the scenery alone as we're up in that plane. And the the fact that this film is, you know, 90 minutes and kind of was built out in that time. So from the start of the movie to the end, that is the duration of the flight, um, is is a real experience to watch in a cinema, because you know at some point they have to land that plane. um, and I think to see Mark playing a character like this is a real treat for people, because it's so different from what he's done recently. um, and it is absolutely something you should see in a cinema. It's a lot of fun, um, and I think see it on a bigger screen possible.